Hello, my name is Will DeWitt. I will be presenting a short slideshow on the influence of philosophy and religion on the concept of tuning. This presentation is basically a discussion of a book entitled Temperament, the idea that solved music's greatest riddle by Stuart Isikoff. Indeed, this presentation delves into the historical battles and influences that shaped the evolution of tuning and temperament. Temperament did not just evolve. It did not just evolve continuously and without much contentiousness. It's essentially a discussion, as I said, of the book by Stuart Isikoff, the idea that solved music's greatest riddle. Isikoff is a composer, critic, and the founding editor of the magazine Piano Today. He's been published quite extensively on the topic of musical temperament. Music, it seems, has a glitch, a bug or a virus that can't be completely eradicated. Isikoff refers to this phenomenon as a great riddle. Pythagoras, yes, that Pythagoras, the one who gave us the theorem a squared plus b squared, you know the rest, his discovery that certain intervals, which we know today as perfect intervals, are actually reflections of basic mathematical proportions. The Greeks believed that music is a pure reflection of the order found in the cosmos. Pythagoras merely confirmed that belief. He's credited with having devised a system of tuning based solely upon the interval of a fifth, the most consonant interval after the octave. One way in which he may have done so was by constructing a series of both descending and ascending fifths from the same starting point, the circle of fifths. Other Greek philosophers and writers, including Plato, Aristotle, and Aristoxenus, were all influenced by the Pythagorean model. Aristoxenus, showed below, believed that musical intervals should be judged by ear and not solely by mathematical ratios. Maybe that's why his eyes are closed. Pythagorean quandary. If you fast forward several generations, we find that musicians were discovering something odd about his ratios. The mystical mathematician had shown that if one string of an instrument is exactly twice as long as another, 2 to 1, and made of the same material and tightened to the same level of tension, the two strings, when sounded together, should form an octave, a perfect harmonic. If two strings are in a ratio of 3 to 2, they should sound the interval of a fifth. Of course, a ratio of 4 to 3 produces a perfect fourth. Musically speaking, 12 consecutively stacked fifths at a ratio of 3 to 2 should exactly equal 8 octaves. It turns out, though, that in practice, Pythagorean math is not perfect. If you tune pure fifths end on end 12 times, you arrive on a note that is almost the same, but not quite, as the one produced by an octave using a 2 to 1 ratio. Literally, something didn't quite add up. I invite you to watch the YouTube video of this presentation a little bit later on. Reality differed from the ideal. This realization was difficult to accept, as you can imagine, especially if, like Plato, you held that divine cosmic order governed everything in the natural world. It must be the listener's faulty ears. How can the universe not add up? No allowance could be made for anything that introduced chaos. The perfect ideal couldn't possibly be allowed to be tarnished by some unimaginable mathematical flaw. Fortunately, as long as music was performed melodically, one note at a time, this did not present a problem, and that's typically how it was done for hundreds of years after Pythagoras. But as the Middle Ages rolled in, musicians began to probe the structure of tonality. The advent of harmonic devices such as polyphony, for example, stirred numerous debates about how to work around the inherent dissonances. Knowledge of the ancient Greek musical system was available to medieval musicians mainly through the writings of Boethius, Boethius was probably the last Roman writer who understood Greek. Most of the musical theory he passed on was derived from Pythagoras, whose discoveries were applied to form what we know today as just temperament. Builders of the ninth and 10th centuries used principles of just tuning to construct instruments like the organ. Howling, frightening dissonances which occurred while performing certain intervals on their Gothic organs inspired the often used description, wolf intervals. In music theory, the wolf, sometimes called the Procrustean fifth or imperfect fifth, is a particularly dissonant musical interval spanning 7 semitones. Strictly, the term refers to an interval produced by a specific tuning system, widely used in the 16th and 17th century, the quarter comma mean tone temperament. More broadly, it is also used to refer to similar intervals produced by other tuning systems, including most mean tone temperaments. The wolfing phenomenon was especially problematic for instruments which have fixed tones, and those would be, you guessed it, keyboards like the clavichord, pictured here. Different methods of tampering and compromise were employed to disguise, conceal, and eradicate the dissonances that plagued every organ, clavichord, and piano. How would you like to play that? Innovative builders created keyboards with additional keys so that a performer could avoid the wolf intervals. New systems of tuning often came about as a result of someone trying to improve upon or fix a previous one. We refer to these methods of tuning as temperaments, of course. Isakov frequently sidebars his readers with entertaining anecdotes of how various clerics, scientists, philosophers, artists, and of course musicians themselves attempted to deal with the complexities of the issue. Approximately 150 of them were proposed. Many were shaped by philosophical and religious reasoning. Almost all of the great thinkers of the Middle Ages and Renaissance got involved. They felt compelled to weigh in on this very contentious subject. Not because they were musicians or were particularly curious about music, but as a matter of cosmic importance, tuning required their attention. And Platonic thinking and philosophy influenced the opinions of many, especially church thinkers, like Augustine. Augustine, in his Confessions, basically poured over his own thoughts about how he felt, pulled in two different directions when listening to music. He felt that it stimulated his senses and his lustfulness, but at the same time, he noted that it also enhanced his worshipful attitude. In the end, he believed that he preferred simplicity in music. He once enjoyed music so much that it might be said that he was beguiled by the beauty of music, almost addicted to it. God set him free from that, however. He continues to enjoy music, especially hymns, because these texts, mixed with music, increase his devotion. Nevertheless, as a Christian, he finds it hard to find the proper place for music in his life. He recognizes that it helps him have greater devotion when God's words are sung, but he also recognizes that certain forms of music simply stir him up emotionally and gratify his senses. Oh no. He also recognizes the tendency, on the other hand, to overreact to that and to be overly strict with himself, denying himself the pleasures of music. He concludes that there is a legitimate place for music in the church and expresses his longing to always delight more in the truth that the music conveys than in the mere stimulation which music itself gives him. I guess about Augustine we could say more than anyone else, He truly suffered from cognitive dissonance on this matter. Many of the temperaments explored by medieval and Renaissance musicians were also influenced by Platonic thinking. As noted earlier, Plato's philosophy upheld the primacy of thoughts, superlative ideas, and cosmic ideals as the basis for understanding reality. In crafting a system of tuning, therefore, it was vitally important for them to prioritize and preserve the sanctity and purity of at least the cosmically ordained intervals, like the fourth, the fifth, the octave. To allow the perfect octave and the fifth to be defiled through impure tuning was just unthinkable. The breakthrough finally came in the 18th century when the keyboard was given musical symmetry through a tuning of equal temperament. Although each pitch was now reliably equidistant from the ones that precede and follow it, none of the sacred intervals remained perfect. Equal temperament allowed for enough compromise to prevent any other interval from sounding bad, but it also prevented the chances of reaching perfection in any other interval. Equal tuning allows a musical pattern begun on one note to be duplicated when starting on any other. It creates a musical universe in which the relationships between tones are reliably and uniformly consistent. A new world of music that greatly expanded possibility. This allowed Liszt, Chopin, Brahms, Debussy, and Gershwin, pictured at the right, to compose piano music we listen to today. Equal temperament was not wholeheartedly embraced for quite a while, however. Contrary to what we've been taught, Bach did not compose the well-tempered clavier, for example, to promote the equal-tempered tuning system. His motivation for the WTC was to demonstrate the feasibility of composing in well-temperament, and therefore to demonstrate the varying key colors in well-temperament. The various well-temperaments used in Bach's time are distinct from our own equal temperament. Well-temperament represented a departure from the various mean tone tunings that were used in earlier music. Beethoven also preferred the unique personalities found in unequal tunings. His favorite key of C minor elicited something special for him, not found in other tonalities. So has the riddle been solved? No, it hasn't. But it is unlikely that another tuning system will take the place of equal temperament, anytime soon at least. It's not the Holy Grail, if such a thing even exists. For practical reasons, equal temperament will continue to be used as a result of a grand compromise. Modern musicians have finally sacrificed Plato's nature to the gods of expediency. It appears to be a good trade-off. Thank you very much.